So who is this way of education, this way of learning actually for? So let's start with the obvious, right? Parents who are already digitally nomadic in jobs, either they're in a job which allows them to work from anywhere, or they have their own business which allows them to work from anywhere, and then suddenly a child comes along. And typically a child comes along, and what do? Well, we settle down, we find a location, we grow roots, and we put the child through school. This type of education would allow them, or type of education system would allow those parents to continue to live that lifestyle and expose their child to a wealth of experiences that they would otherwise not get by just growing roots somewhere. Another one is parents who like to travel, and again, who love to travel and who want to share that experience of travel and culture and all the experiences that you can have and the experiential learning you'll do through travel. They want to share that with their children and expose them to it at a very young age. I went overseas the first time when I was 2.5. Didn't really have much choice in it, but that's the way it was. And that was from New Zealand. I came back when I was 7. So we sort of set up roots down there and then came back here. And then at the age of 17, I left overseas. I went to Europe. So I spent 10 years in Australia after 4.5 years, I guess, in Australia in my early childhood. Next one is work visa parents. People on work visas, they get a year or 2 years in the country maybe, and then they have to leave. And we see it with the Dutch community. I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands, and my wife is originally Dutch, and we see that with Dutch and German communities where they come over and all of a sudden their visa's not being renewed, or their role's not being renewed, so that they would then convert to a permanent residence. So that their work visa is what they have, and they have to leave, and they go back to the Netherlands. So uproot the children out of school, send them back, all the rest of it. I know what it's like to be uprooted out of school. When I spent the first 2 years of school in New Zealand. I did the next 4 years of school at one school in Sydney, all except for the last term of year 6. And then I went to another school for the final 6 years of high school, right? So I get what it's like to be moved, or although I wasn't moved around as much as some of these kids are being moved around these days, with parents who have work visas. I was moved around a little bit. And on that work visa thing, I actually met a couple whose child goes to school where my son goes to school, and this was a gentleman and a lady from India, and the gentleman had a job here with a public with a government agency, and it wasn't that his job was made redundant; it was that his job was put on hold whilst the powers that be in government deliberated about whatever it was that had to be deliberated on before the project he was supposed to be working on could continue. So what happened was he'd been here for about 8-9 months, and suddenly this thing's being put on hold. It's expected to be on hold for about 30 days or maybe 2 months, but it's unknown, and they don't give him a specific time frame. So what does he have to do? And what he's done is he's had to give up his house, he's had to pack everything up, he's had to ship stuff back to India, he's had to take his child out of school, and they're all back in India now. And they don't know when they're coming back. It may be in another it was 2 weeks ago, so maybe another 2 weeks, from the day of this recording, obviously, or it could be 60 days. They don't know. And when I talked to him, I said, well, this is what I'm working on. This is the education initiative I'd like to see implemented. He's like, oh my God, that would be so good if that were available right now, because that would be perfect. We wouldn't, the child wouldn't have been in the school. We would never have met, obviously, but his child would never have been in the school he's in, wouldn't have needed to be uprooted. There would have been a continuity of the education, because it would have been the one system, whether the child was learning here in Sydney or back in Delhi or Mumbai. I think it was Delhi they're from. Wherever the child was learning, provided there was a location for that school, and even if there wasn't a fixed hub location at the time, there'd be the online capability for continuity of education through this education initiative I'm talking about. So that's another classic, real tangible example of how this sort of thing can really work. It's also, as a final category or whatever, it's just for people who have a different view of the physical world and their way of being in it, and realize that the way the current education system is, and I mean that in the current state it is in its transformative state towards more what they call future-focused learning. This is for the people who realize that is really a latent way of viewing future-focused learning. The current focus of future-focused learning is really looking backwards from where we need to be going. It's looking at where school will be in 2020, 2025, not in 2050, which is where we're looking at. And even what we're talking about right now with regard to this education initiative won't cover us till 2050. It's, as I've said in one of the other videos, this is a first step. It's a milestone along the way, along the journey to 2050, and whatever happens after 2050, well, that happens. Someone else will pick up on this and take it to places that we haven't even thought of yet. And that's part of why the think tank is coming together to look at the way work works, the way people work, how we work in the world, how the world works, and therefore what environments we need to be able to prepare the younger generation through the education system they go through to enter the workforce, either as employers or as employees, business owners or employees, managers, whatever, in whatever capacity, so that they can enter the workforce and either fulfill jobs or create jobs that they're passionate about. And be working in a way they're already accustomed to. This, like, to give great contrast, and I think everyone's probably seen this one in some form. Industrial age learning was lines, rows and rows and columns of students at desks in bricks and mortar building. And if we were to compare that to the idea of working in a plane, train, automobile, or a education hub around the world, it's vastly different. It's the industrial age way of learning taught them information and then prepared them to go and work in factories and offices and things like that. But people don't necessarily work in factories and offices anymore. Yes, there are obviously factories. Yes, there are obviously offices. But you get what I mean. It's not in the same way as it was. In any case, that's probably enough for me for now on Who Is This For? If this resonates with you, as always, please just get in touch and obviously subscribe if you'd like to see more of this when we post more content. Please like and subscribe the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to get involved in some way, then please just reach out and let's have a conversation. My name is Paul Langer. Thank you very much for watching.